the untold story behind Patel Motel Cartel. From small villages in Gujarat to becoming the backbone of the US hotel industry, Patels now own over 60% of America's motels and hotels. They came with nothing but grit, family unity, and a dream. By working 16-hour days, cleaning rooms, running front desks, and saving every dollar, they turned one property into two, two into 10, and today into an empire. This isn't just business, it's legacy. A story of immigrants who proved that with hard work, discipline, and vision, the impossible becomes possible. Recently, IMAC Patel launched the song Patel Motel Cartel, reminding the world what we've always known. Patels can do anything when they put their heart into it. From motels to millions, this is not just success, it's history in the making. Follow Financial for Wealth for more syndication secrets.
Now, motels are very labor-intensive businesses. So what they did is when a Patel took over a motel, they fired all the staff. And the family took over all the jobs, the cleaning and front desk and everything else, right? And the Patels are vegetarians and they live a very simple life. So when a Patel took over a motel in an area, what they were able to do is they were able to undercut the prices of all the other motels in the area because they have no labor. They have no payroll. They have no workers' comp, none of those things. And so if everyone else is charging $25 a night, they're charging, $19 a night. So the occupancy was higher than everyone else. And they saved their money. And then what they would do is buy the next motel, send the nephew to run it, and then buy the next motel. And this started happening in the early 70s. And when you fast forward to today, 80% of all the motels in the US are under Patel ownership. 80%.
It was a family?
It's an ethnic group
Okay.
in India. And so this ethnic group came to Uganda to build the railroad. But they're very savvy business people. And over the course of the last 100-odd years, when they were in Uganda, through their dhando methods of doing business, they became very successful entrepreneurs and they controlled large parts of the Ugandan economy. And Idi Amin came to power in Uganda in the 1970s. And he said, Africa is for Africans. So what he did is he threw all the Patels out and he nationalized all their assets. So now the Patels were stateless. The US took them in, the UK took them in, Canada took some of them in. And when they landed in the US, they basically really didn't have any skills that would allow them to get good jobs, white-collar jobs in the US. And what a few of them started to do was they realized that if they bought a motel, a small 10 or 20 room motel, the family could live in one or two of the rooms and they could use the money they got out and get a bank loan and run the motel. Now, motels are very labor-intensive businesses. So what they did is when a Patel took over a motel, they fired all the staff. And the family took over all the jobs, the cleaning and front desk and everything else, right? And the Patels are vegetarians and they live a very simple life. So when a Patel took over a motel in an area, what they were able to do is they were able to undercut the prices of all the other motels in the area because they have no labor. They have no payroll. They have no workers' comp, none of those things. And so if everyone else is charging $25 a night, they're charging, $19 a night. So the occupancy was higher than everyone else. And they saved their money. And then what they would do is buy the next motel, send the nephew to run it, and then buy the next motel. And this started happening in the early 70s. And when you fast forward to today, 80% of all the motels in the US are under Patel ownership. 80%. So the Patels make up 0.1% of the US population. Indians make up about little over 1%, maybe 1.2, 1.3%. Just 1/10 of that is the Patels. And this 0.1% population is controlling 80% of the motels in the country. And it's because of the Dhando way.
So if I want to steal from the Dando way, you told me it's good to be a copier. What are the principles of the Dando way that I need to be thinking about? Because I think was there 9? Yeah, there was 9 principles in total in the book.
Well, the most important one is heads I win, tails I don't lose much. Everything we discussed today, Stephen, is heads I win, tails I don't lose much. When I started my business, when Bill Gates started, when Sam Walton started, when Richard Branson started, that was the formula. If they won, they would win big. And if they lost, they'd lose nothing.
Those Patels from India that buy all the motels, they know more about motels than you. They live in the goddamn motel. They pay no income taxes. They don't pay much in workers' compensation. And every dime they get, they fix up the thing and buy another motel. You want to compete with the Patels? Not I.
Patels own half of...
So this is a fact that all Indians know. It's called the Patel Cartel, and they control half of the motels in the United States, and they dominate the industry and the trade shows and the associations, and it's been going on for decades. And it's a beautiful thing because they figured out, and it's not just Patels, I have family as well that own motels. I'm a Desai. But we figured out that you can own an asset, get cash flow, and get appreciation all at the same time. And it provided a place to live for your family growing up. And I'm actually an American. I'm in Gujarat as well. I'm an hour south of Surat. So maybe we'll see each other, probably not. But welcome to the state I'm from and where all Patels are from. I hope you're liking it. But you see this in other cultures as well. The Koreans own dry cleaners, stereotypically. Vietnamese own nail salons. So certain communities are predisposed to doing certain things, and then they bring their families, their uncles, aunts, cousins, all into the business. So pretty cool that you're in Gujarat, you're finding this out. I hope you enjoy your stay here in India.
When we first moved to the US, my dad bought a motel in Minnesota. Yes, the Patel motel phenomena is very real. For the first few years, we lived in that motel, turning 4 of the 60 rooms into our living room, kitchen, and bedrooms. It was home. But back then, I used to be embarrassed. The school bus would drop me off right in front and kids would poke fun, whispering to each other, staring at me as if I was different. But the second I stepped through those front doors, I was in my safe space. The motel is where I learned jugaad from my dad, the art of fixing anything with whatever you've got. I'd help fold laundry, clean rooms, set up breakfast, and during the night shifts, I'd sit at the front desk with my dad, watching every James Bond movie, from Sean Connery to Roger Moore to Pierce Brosnan. To this day, I'm still a huge 007 fan because of those nights. I didn't have a typical American upbringing, but I had something better. A front row seat to hustle, resilience, and movie marathons with my dad, and for that, I'm grateful. My dad refused to pay $15 for a kid's haircut. He said I'll do it myself. So he bought the clippers from Walmart, the full set, scissors, guards, even the mist bottle. And since he had the gear, he thought the only skill he needed was confidence, which he had plenty of. Every month, especially before picture days, he'd sit me on a bar stool, lay newspapers on the ground, and soak my hair, comb it in all directions down, and cut in a perfect circle. Yes, I had a bowl cut for most of my childhood, and my sister, she'd be the first to laugh because she never had to go through it. One cut was so bad I saw myself in the mirror and cried, not because of the hair, but because I knew what was coming at school and from my family. After that, I grew my hair out, full on Bieber face, and when it finally needed a trim, my mom took me to Great Clips, and those clippers, still in the storage bin somewhere, and I pray that my dad never finds them again. When we first moved to the US, my dad bought a motel in a small town in Minnesota, and honestly, growing up in a motel felt like the sweet life of Zach and Cody, but with more chores and way less glamour. We weren't just living in a room or two, we had dozens of them. Want to play hide and seek? 10,000 square feet of rooms and closets to hide in. TV arguments with my sister? Solved. We could go to any open room we wanted as long as we didn't sit on the bed. We had unlimited breakfast food all day round, industrial washers that finished all our laundry in one go, and after the pool closed for guests, it was our turn. But the coolest part? The people. Truck drivers, college kids, sweet old couples. By 13, I'd heard more road trip stories than most people hear in a lifetime. And when family visited, which happened a lot, there was always parking and always a room available for them. It wasn't fancy, nor was it a mansion, but to us, it was home. A home built by 2 immigrant parents who would turn a roadside motel into their version of the American dream. In 2008, my dad almost lost everything. 3 motels gone, 1 tied up in family drama, and yet he wasn't panicking. When we first moved to the US, my dad bought a motel in a small town in Minnesota, and in 7 years he turned 1 into 5. We had moved into our first real house and the American dream was working. But the 2008 financial crisis didn't care about dreams. Tourism collapsed, the banks panicked, and we sold 3 motels just to stay afloat. And just like that, we were back to 1. Money became a constant undercurrent. My parents were always tense, and my sister and I, we understood. We tried to be easy kids. We knew not to ask for much. But instead of holding on tighter here, my dad turned his gaze 8,000 miles away to Uganda, a place he'd visited in the 90s. Sugarcane farms, real estate, commercial plots, he bet everything. Honestly, most people think Uganda is all farmlands and slums. It's not. And for my dad, it was the future. And maybe that's what I learned from him, that if one dream crumbles, don't just rebuild it, redraw it. My dad built a $3 million condo complex without spending a single dollar of his own, and he was not a real estate mogul. After the 2008 crash, we almost lost everything, and we sold most of our motels. While the big real estate players were bailing out, my dad took his last $100,000 and moved 8,000 miles away to Uganda. No investors, no safety net, just him. He bought 2 plots, built 2 mansions, sold them and cleared the loan, then used that money to build a 14-unit condo. But then came his boldest move, a 52-unit tower called Newton Heights, and he had no money left. So what did he do? Barter. He went to every vendor, plumber, electrician, builder, and said, help me build this and I will give you a unit. No invoice, no payments, just trust. If even one person backed out, the whole project would have collapsed. But 5 years later, the building stood tall. Of the 52 units, my dad kept 36 to rent or sell, and the 2 penthouses, he kept those for us for when we visit. Moguls build with money. My dad built with trust and relationships, and with those 2, you can build an empire. In my house, car shopping wasn't a quick errand, it was a full day event. When my sister finally got her license, we showed up at the dealership on a Saturday morning, having done zero research, because in my dad's eyes, the only real options were a Toyota, Honda, and Kia, in that order. We test drove a few used cars. My dad made sure to show no reaction, because if they see you like it, they'll charge more. Then, the negotiations began. 3 hours, lowball offer, dealer shocked. Dad bumps it a few $100s, but now he wants all-weather mats and free oil changes. The salesperson kept walking back to talk to finance like what we were asking was illegal. Eventually, we drove off in a completely different car, one we never planned to buy because yes, my dad got upsold, again. But somehow we still walked out with a great deal. And I just smiled because watching my dad make a grown man sweat in a tie was worth every minute.
So when I was 15, I started researching my family's history, and several years later, I ended up going to grad school to finish studying my family's history, and I wrote this thesis about it, and it ended up becoming this 180-page manuscript that I've been sitting on and that has been sitting in my Google Docs for many, many years. But today I thought I'd share some of the research that I did. There are 5 million Patels around the world, and I feel like so many of us don't know where we came from and our migration history over the last 1,000 years. And so I thought I'd share a little post on just a little piece of our history and where we came from 1,000 years ago. So I'll link the Substack post that I wrote, but essentially we immigrated 1,000 years ago, and I was able to trace this back through a combination of things. I was in grad school at NYU, and so I had access to a lot of the records and the formal library and database, but some of my research came from my parents tracking down my family's from Sabarkantha in Gujarat, and so it's came from my parents tracking down this book that actually had very specific history of our village, and the mandir. We have a Mahakali mandir that we call Mataji Mandir in our village, and so I was also able to track down. My parents were able to track down that book, and then because the book was in Gujarati, my dad and I translated it, and I incorporated a lot of that research into the book. So 1,000 years ago, my ancestors were settled on a region called Vayavi Desha, which is present-day Afghanistan. Over time, they ended up splitting into 2 groups. One group went towards Iran, and the other group migrated towards the Hindu Kush region of Punjab. The group which migrated to Punjab ended up splitting into 3 groups: the Leva, Kadwa, and Ojra groups. The story is that the names came from Love and Kush, Leva and Kadwa, the sons of Lord Rama from the Ramayana. These groups were known to come from the bloodline of a man named Kashyap Rishi, who was a Brahmin. And certain practices, although they're like different, they were similar threads to them. So you'll see in Gujarat that you'll find like Gujaratis have different practices, but they're also very similar. So then, for reasons unknown, the dominant groups Leva and Gadva left and migrated to Patan, which is a city in the northwestern region of Gujarat. So essentially, the Leva and Gadva groups, they left and they ended up immigrating or migrating towards Patan, which is a city in the northwestern region of Gujarat, and then they followed the river. I think it's the Sabarmati River. I might be wrong. That is the main river, so I'm guessing it is the Sabarmati River, to present-day Mehsana, which is a district in the state. And then one story that says like why these groups dispersed is because of the king of Patan named Sidra Jaisi. He ended up bringing 1,001 Gujarati families 900 years ago to take up the task of reviving dry land and cultivating its crops. And so through conquering the land, he ended up collecting taxes from the people who already lived there, and the people who would eventually come to settle there. And these 1,001 families were called the Patidars. The word Patidar literally means holder of land. Like Patti means like strip of land, Pati. And so, yeah, that, which I think is cool. So over time, we ended up changing our names to Patel as we became leaders or the heads of the land. Patels also many of them changed their names. So you'll find a lot of Gujaratis, like, although they originated as Patel, they ended up changing their last name to fit the village that they came from. So like if there's a Borsad village, like you'll find like there are Gujaratis named like Borsadia or Boladia or things like that, you know. And it also was a way for people to like set themselves apart, because like people actually wanted their last names to be different from like Patels, because there are so many Patels. The village that my family ended up immigrating or living on and setting roots on was along the Sabarmati River, called Sapad, and there's like a samaj. It's a samaj of like 10 villages that are super close together. So a lot of like intermarrying happens amongst those villages. So my ancestors settled on, there's a Brahmin that actually the story is that he was the first person to settle on our village land, because it was where there was a meeting point between the Sabarmati and the Hatmati rivers, which when there's an intersection between the rivers, that's very sacred. So you'll notice most civilizations ended up, being built around rivers. That's exactly what my ancestors did. So anyway, this is just a little piece of the history. I feel super passionate about knowing my family history. I feel like our generation is the last generation, or our parents' generation is the last generation that's going to be physically tied to India, because they grew up there, they were born there. I was born and raised in the U.S., but I spent my summers growing up going to India, and I just think it's so important for us to know our history and where we came from. And I think there's just so much about ourselves that we can learn in terms of our history, who we are, just by what is in our DNA, by knowing about the people who came before us. So I shared a link of the Substack, and I'm going to share it again. But yeah, maybe I'll do more of these. Thanks for watching. So on my post on Patel history, I got this question on why Patels own hotels. And for context, Patels own 40% of the hospitality industry. So this 40% is $40 billion in net worth. Patels specifically own 80 to 90% of the small motel, or the motels in American small towns. And Gujaratis own 22,000 of 53,000 hotels nationwide. I was just looking at my stats. Gujaratis also own and dominate like pharmacy and retail, the diamond industry globally. But the story behind how Patels and Gujaratis got into the hotel motel industry is also really interesting. So, in terms of why Patels owned motels to start, is very practical. In motels, you can live, so you have your like rent, mortgage, all of that is essentially non-existent because you live in the property, and then your your work is right there, so you don't have to worry about transportation. And I'm going to just read right from my book. So. In the book, Leaving India by Meena Hajratwala, she talks about the first Gujaratis who began to penetrate the motel game starting out in San Francisco in the 1950s. By 1963, a social scientist studying the phenomenon found 22 families owning dozens of the city's Skid Row motels in the area between 3rd and 6th Streets just south of Market in San Francisco. All these families were Patels who would eventually come to dominate the industry. So the motel industry, much like convenience stores and Dunkin' Donuts, are like a gateway for many Gujarati Patels finding their footing. And what really made this trend take off with Patels owning motels is that it was likely a combination of government investment in interstate highways, the oil crisis of the 1970s, and Walt Disney World. So the first motels in a lot of these Patel communities were also community hubs. They were where immigrants stayed, where immigrants' family members could stay to get their footing. So what followed after these Patels, Gujaratis, took over these motels was what a lot of sociologists call like family network migration effects. A lot of our families brought over the networks that they had in India to the United States. And so, they quickly supported other family members in getting motels and hotels set up. The key here, though, is that Indians lived so much more cheaply than Americans did that they were able to undercut the white competition. And so slowly you just found like my mom's side of the family owns literally like 400 plus motels that run from Indiana to Chicago. So you just found that like these Patel families would slowly just like buy up more and more and more motels, and they would, they would get sold them, or they would do better than like their American competition because they just like lived cheaply. And they also they wouldn't really hire any staff. Like the families would run the motels, the families would run the night shifts, they would do everything themselves. And coming from small farming villages and farming backgrounds and small business backgrounds, a lot of Gujaratis, or most Gujaratis, brought over this business sense and applied it to the motel industry, and also applied it to other industries like Dunkin' Donuts, 7-Eleven, pharmacy, that kind of thing.
I was more in the independent motel game. I own and operate 28 hotels across America. I have 14 motels here locally, and I have 14 operational properties in the Southeast.
That's Bina. That's why I married her. Family is everything to her. She's a Patel. She has 961 cousins at this show tonight. And she's a Motel Patel, so that family shit runs deep. Yeah. You ever notice that every motel you've ever stayed at, all owned by Indian people? Look at the name tag, Patel. They're all from one part of India, and they're all related. If you've stayed at a Hampton Inn, a La Quinta Inn, a Quality Inn, a Comfort Inn, a Super 8, you have been supporting this Patel cartel. For centuries, we have been debating Indians, Asians, Jews. Who is the cheapest of them all? Motherfucker, it's Indians. Only Gujarati Indians would choose a family business you could live at.